You are about to witness one of the historical events, the most calculating acts of psychological war. For 76 days, they didn't just put Marie Antoinette in prison. They systematically destroyed her humanity piece by piece. And it all started with 8-year-old boy. Forget everything I think you know about the guillotine, the blade that was mercy. What happened? There was something much darker before. They discovered her only vulnerability, and they exploited him with a cruelty that still haunts historical records today. This is the story of Prisoner, number 280, and I am going to show you what exactly they did to her. It was the 3rd of July, 1793, midnights, Temple Prison in Paris. You hear boots echoing on the stone, corridors, heavy, purposeful, becoming closer. Marie Antoinette sleeps next to her, Louis Charles's 8-year-old son. Her hand lies on his chest. She did not allow him out of her sight as they executed him father 6 months ago. The door explodes. Open 6 guards fill the room. Holding document. Report. They came for boy. What happens next will be an echo through these prison walls throughout our. The former queen turns into something primal. A mother fighting for your child with all your strength. She is gone. She is leaving her body to the door. She screams until her voice breaks. She begs them to take her away. Instead, but here is what does it do. The timing is much worse. This is no accident. Violence. It is not chaos. It is calculated. Because revolutionaries have realized something important. They can't break Marie Antoinette through torture, hunger, or humiliation, but they can destroy her with her own love. And they is going to use her son to destroy her in ways to make the guillotine feel as an afterthought. Stay with me because it becomes much darker than you can imagine. Before we face the horrors ahead, you need to understand who Marie Antoinette really was. Because she was a woman. They tortured in 1793. It was not like that at all. Caricature of revolutionaries created. She was born in Vienna under the name Marie Antoinette, 1755, Austrian Archduchess, and the youngest daughter of Empress Maria Theresa. She got married at the age of 14. Goes to the future. King Louis XVI France. It wasn't love. It was geopolitics. Austria and France needed union, and it was the price. The French court despised her from the first day. She was Austrian, which meant that she was enemy. She was young, awkward, and did not understand French customs. The courtiers made fun of her accent, her clothes, her every movement. Even her husband ignored her for years. The marriage was not consummated until 7 years, a humiliation that became public gossip all over Europe. So she did what any isolated young woman would do. She escaped for pleasure, complex hairstyles, expensive dresses, parties in her private corner, Petit Trianon. The French people, starving and desperate, saw these excesses and branded her as Madame Deficit. They actually say let them eat cake when they are told people didn't have bread. No, that is it, propaganda, but it didn't matter. The damage was done by the time in 1789 the revolution broke out. Marie Antoinette became the most popular in France, a convenient scapegoat. She wasn't monster, she was a foreigner, a woman, and the queen. 3 things that made her the perfect goal, and when the monarchy has fallen, revolutionaries, someone was needed who could be blamed for centuries' royal luxury. They chose it, but here it is, a crucial detail. By 1793, Marie Antoinette was not a frivolous party girl. She was a mother of 4 children who watched her eldest son die from tuberculosis at the age of 7. She saw her husband was dragged to the guillotine. She spent months locked in the Temple prison with her surviving children, knowing that any day could be the last. She has already lost everything. Her, the crown, her freedom, her husband, her country. The revolutionaries were about to teach her that she can still lose more. Let me paint you a picture. Temple prison, because that is where the place was designed to break people long before they ever went to the guillotine. It was medieval fortress in Paris, originally built by the Templars. Dark, damp, oppressive. After King Louis XVI was executed in January 1793, Marie Antoinette and her 2 survivors' children, 14-year-old Marita and 8-year-old Louis Charles, was locked in a tower guarded day and night. At first, they were kept together. Marinette tried to maintain some semblance of normal life for her children. She taught them lessons. She prayed with them. She held them close to her. The night when the sounds of the revolutionary, a roar of crowds rolled through the streets outside. But the guards were always watching. observation, record keeping, reporting to the Committee of Public Safety, revolutionary government, which is now controlled France, and they noticed something Marie Antoinette could handle nothing but threats against her children. So they started experimenting with psychological torture. At first, they limited access to children's rooms, causing Marianne to beg permission to see my son and daughter. Then they installed additional security guards inside their premises. The men who sat in the corner and watched, writing down everything, every conversation, every moment of affection, every tear. Children were not allowed to speak German, my mother's native language. They had to use French, exclusively, which meant even their private family moments were monitored and is controlled by the state. Marie Antoinette began to unravel. Her hair, which was light brown, began to turn white from stress. This condition is called Marie Antoinette syndrome, which is actually a real medical phenomenon. She stopped. She started bleeding, which she desperately tried to hide from guards. But she held on because she also had children. The revolutionaries knew they had to accept. What is further from her? The 3rd of July, 1793, the date that will determine Marie Antoinette's final torment. Let me go you through what happened that night, because the primary sources, the factual ones, testimony of people who were there, absolutely destructive. Around 10 p.m. Marie Antoinette just put 8-year-old Louis Charles to bed. He sleeps in the same room. She haven't let him out of my sight since then, the execution of the father. Her daughter, Marie Tats, and her daughter-in-law, Madame Elizabeth, are in the next rooms. Then they hear it boots. Several men approaching climb the tower stairs. The door slams open. 6 municipal security guards led by a man, having with him an official order from the Committee of Public Safety. They have arrived to pick up Louis Charles. He must be re-educated by the Republic, separated from the corrupting influence of his mother. Marita Teres later wrote about this in her memoirs. She described the moment. Her mother went from reserve to wild in an instant. Marie Antoinette threw himself between the guards and her sleeping son. She grabbed Louis Schlesser and held him so tightly that he woke up. I cried. I was confused, and then I started shouts. Inigant objections, former queen. Animalistic roar, animalistic scream. You won't take him away. He'll have to kill me first. He is just a child. The guards tried to reason with him. The order came from the highest power. She had no choice. She didn't care. A whole hour, 60 minutes. She physically blocked the doorway by holding her son, refusing to let them pass. The guards threatened her. They threatened Boy. They threatened her daughter. They said that if she didn't obey, they will use force, and people will get Marie Antoinette. Continued to fight. Finally, Madame Elizabeth begged her. The daughter-in-law stopped. The boy was sobbing, frightened. Marita was hysteria, and the guards became the violent resistance of Marie Antoinette. She kissed Louis Charles for the last time. She whispered something in his face. Ear. We'll never know what exactly. And then she watched as 6 grown men dragged her 8-year-old son descends the tower stairs. His screams echoed until they died away. She collapsed to the floor and didn't move for several hours. But then, where it becomes truly evil. The revolutionaries didn't just take her away, son. He was given to a man named Antoine Son, the radical shoemaker specially chosen to put the boy to sleep. And Simon's methods were horrific. Louis Charles was locked in a dark, windowless room. He was forced to wear a red revolutionary hat and sing anti-monarchist songs. They taught him to swear. His mother, calling her disgusting names, repeated accusations of treason and conspiracy. And when he refused, Simon, they beat him, starved him, and kept him locked up isolation until the boy's spirit broke. For several weeks, Louis Charles was repeating everything he was told, they say, including accusations so monstrous, so vile that they could be used as weapons against his mother in a terrifying way. Marie Antoinette didn't know the details, but she knew that her son was suffering, and she couldn't do anything to save him. Then they transported her. In Conciergerie, the 1st of August, 1793, less than a month after she was taken away, son, the guards burst into Marionette's room at Temple Prison. At 2 a.m., no explanation, no warning, just an order. You are being transferred. They went their separate ways, from her daughter and daughter-in-law. She begged them to say goodbye. They refused. They dragged her down the tower stairs, threw her into the carriage and drove her away through the dark streets of Paris, a place called Conciergerie. If you know anything about the French Revolution, you know that name. The concierge was they called the cloakroom, a scoundrel guillotine. Prisoners were sent there, their last days before execution. Marinette wasn't just touched. She was preparing for death. But the revolutionaries wanted to make those the last few days as psychologically as destructive as possible. She was assigned prisoner number 280. Not the former queen, not even her name, just a number. Her cell phone was tiny, about 12 feet by 8 feet. The walls were made of raw stone, covered in mold. There was a thin straw, mattress, wooden table, 2 chairs, and a chamber pot, 1 candle for light. There are no windows, only suffocating the darkness of a medieval dungeon. And that is where the really insidious thing is. They gave her a screen to protect her from prying eyes. Folding screen so she could change clothes or use the chamber pot in privacy. Sounds humane. Right. Wrong. Privacy screen, there was a theatre because inside this chamber in there were 2 armed guards the whole time. They sat in the corner and watched her every time, the only moment when she ate. I was sleeping while changing clothes behind that useless screen, when she used the chamber pot, when praying. When she cried. Constant unblinking observation. It is not about safety, it was. A middle-aged woman in poor health, locked in a dungeon. It was psychological torture designed to deprive from her last shred of dignity, and historical evidence describes how Marie Antoinette tried to save her self-control. She could sit for hours looking at the wall. Her face was completely empty. The guards reported that she barely spoke, barely moved, barely ate. But at night, when she thought they couldn't see by candlelight, I heard her crying, whispering her son's name, Louis Charles, above and more. She developed severe bleeding, probably uterine cancer or complications from stress. She was bleeding through her clothes and had to ask guards for rags. The humiliation that she suffered in front of men who stared at her mercilessly. Her hair, now completely white, started falling out lumps. She was 37 years old. She looked 60. And then there was the trial. The 14th of October, 1793, 8 a.m. Marie Antoinette was pulled out. She was sent to the cell of the Revolutionary Tribunal. It wasn't a trial, it was speech. The verdict had already been rendered. They decided, but the revolutionaries needed show, something to justify it. Execution for the public and for history. The courtroom was packed. Revolutionary officials, journalists, citizens, thirsty. See the humiliation of the former queen, the prosecutor. A man named Antoine Fouquier-Tinville, ready to bring charges of treason, conspiracy, and financial corruption. Marie Antoinette sat in the defendant's chair, pale, emaciated, dressed in widow's clothes black. They threw for 2 days accusations against her, that she conspired with Austria, which she squandered the French treasury, which she planned counter-revolutionary conspiracies. She responded to each accusation with astonishing composure and intelligence. She refuted false statements. She admitted her mistakes. Without engraving, she refused to be broken. That is how Fouquier-Tinville played the last, most poisonous card. He called witness, Jacques Hebert, radical journalist, and he has repeatedly accusations allegedly brought against Marie Antoinette's 8-year-old son, Louis Charles. A boy under the leadership of his captives claimed that his mother had committed incest with him. Let's get this straight for a moment. They accused her of sexually assaulting her own child using testimony obtained under torture, an 8-year-old boy in a public courtroom in front of hundreds of people. In the room they fell silent. Even the bloodthirsty crowd seemed stunned by the debauchery accusations. Marie Antoinette had remained steadfast despite every insult, every lie, every threat. But she stood up, her voice, which was calm, cracked from dampness emotion. I appeal to all mothers being present in this room, she said. Her eyes sparkle. Is there anyone among you the only one who wouldn't shudder at such a thing accusation? She did not address judges. She addressed the women directly. In the crowd, mothers, daughters, sisters, for the first time during the trial, she did not defend herself as a queen, spoke like a mother who had a child. Weapons were directed against her. Nature. He himself refuses to react to such the charge brought against the mother. she continued. I appeal to all mothers who I am being listened to. In the courtroom flared up some women in the crowd who came to juror for her execution and were touched to tears. Even some revolutionaries the officials shifted uneasily. This was too much, too cruel. But Fouquier, Tinville, he didn't care. He went straight ahead. The remainder of the trial at 4 a.m. on the 16th of October, after a trial that lasted less than 2 days without any real evidence. Marie Antoinette was found guilty of high-level treason and state crimes. Sentence: death by guillotine. The execution is scheduled for the same day, but later day. She was given a few hours in the cell, preparing for death. Returning to it camera. With the approach of dawn and death, just a few hours' drive from Marie Antoinette, was finally got a pen, paper and ink. She didn't write a political manifesto. She didn't curse the revolution. She didn't beg for mercy. She wrote her a letter. Daughter, in-law, Madame Elizabeth, who was still imprisoned in the Temple with Marie Antoinette's daughter. Letter is one of the most heartbreaking documents on history. Let me read them to you, parts of it. This is for you, sister. This is I am writing for the last time. I just was condemned, but not to a shameful death. This is only for criminals, but for return to your brother, innocent as he is. I hope to show the same firmness in my last moments. I am calm as a man when my conscience doesn't reproach me for anything. I deeply regret that I had to give up my poor children. You know what, I live just for them and for you. My good and tender sister, she forgave. Your enemies, ask for forgiveness for any of the evil she had done and beg her, the daughter. In-law must take care of her children. Let my son never forget his father, the last words that I insistently repeat him. Let him never try to avenge us death. She poured out her whole soul into the remaining love, is on this page. Her last thoughts like a mother, like a sister, like a man facing emptiness. Letter. I filled out 4 pages and simply signed them, Marie Antoinette. Then she handed it over. Security guard, here is the shocking truth. The letter was never delivered. The jailers intercepted him, and he disappeared to the Revolutionary Archive. Madame Elizabeth had never read it, neither had she daughter. The letter was not found. Until decades later, after all, Marie Antoinette loved that she died. Her last words to her family, who died in silence. The 16th of October, 1793. 11 a.m., the executioner's assistant entered Marionette's cell and ordered she needs to get ready. Every step was designed to remove the last remnants of her personality. First of all, the dress she was wearing. The simple black mourning dress she wore after her husband's death. Security guard ordered her to take it off and put it on plain white chemise, uniform convicted. She asked to change in private. The guard refused. She had to undress in front of the men who were, I've been watching her for months. Secondly, her hair, now completely white and fragile, was roughly chopped off scissors. No ceremony, no fuss, just rough. Hands and sharp blades cutting off her last physical merits. Thirdly, tying. Her hands were tied behind her back. Her back was tied with a rough rope, so tightly that they cut her wrists. She winced and he said quietly, "You didn't tie me up. Husband's hands like this." Security guard ignored her. At 11 o'clock she was brought in from concierge to dazzler daylight. She was in that dark cell, 76 days. The sunlight hurt her eyes. She was expecting a closed carriage, a small mercy that her husband was given. Instead, there was rough open a wooden cart called a tambrel. Type it is used for transporting animal carcasses. It was forced to climb into the cart and sit on a board with your hands tied and exposed to all of Paris. Like a carriage staggered forward through the streets. Thousands of people lined the route shouting, bullying, spitting, throwing garbage. One man was sitting by the window, furiously drawing Jack Louis David, revolutionary artist who voted for her death. His drawing survived. He depicts a thin woman with sunken eyes sitting. She stood straight. Her face a gloomy masked dignity when the world was screaming for her blood. The path to a plaster revolution took more than an hour of public humiliation designed to destroy everything that only the spirit remained. It didn't work. At 12:15, the carriage stopped at Guillotine. The crowd roared. Marie Antoinette climbed the steps, the platforms without outside help. Her legs trembled, but her head was held high. And then, at the last moment, His life, something unusual happened. When she went up to the board, accidentally stepped on the executioner's foot. She stopped and turned around to him and said her last words. "I am sorry, sir. I didn't mean to do that." Apologies to the man who was going to kill she. A strange, surreal act of politeness. The last reflex of a life lived under royal protocol. But it was more than that. It was a choice in the face of absolute degradation. She chose grace. After 20 seconds, the blade fell. The French Revolution wanted to destroy Marie Antoinette, symbol, Austrian woman, wasteful queen, the embodiment of royal luxury. They subjected her to unimaginable psychological torture. They turned it into a weapon, her own child against her. They stripped her, to her every dignity, every comfort, every bit of personal space, and in the end, they failed, because in their obsession with the destruction of the queen, they accidentally exposed a person, the mother, who fought like hell for her children, the woman who faced monstrous accusations with courage, a man who even on the steps of guillotine that retained its humanity. They wanted her to be remembered as a widow cape, the traitor who deserved it all she got it. Instead, history remembers Marie Antoinette, the woman who endured 76 days of calculated cruelty, and still I found the strength to apologize to her executioner. This is the part I couldn't take it away from her. If this story, if something caught your attention, click the subscribe button. We dive deep into the darkest moments of history, chapters every week, and leave a comment. After learning what really happened in these last 76 days, as you can see Marie Antoinette now, villain, victim, or something much more complex.